Right, so today's guest is someone whose work captures the absurdity, poetry, and horror of how humans relate to the land. He is also a musician, but that's not what he's here for, because he's the author of Yuck, The Birth and Death of the Weird and Wondrous Joshua Tree, a brilliantly researched, genre-bending, and often hilarious book about Southern California's ecological mythology. With his climate-focused writing, we thought he'd make a perfect guest for an interview, so therefore please welcome Barret Baumgart. All right, Barret, thanks so much for joining. It's really nice to have you on. Thanks for making time, and how are you feeling today?
I'm great, man. Yeah, I appreciate you having me here. I'm doing well. Just over here in Los Angeles, there's a little bit of smoke in the air from a couple fires nearby. Big surprise, summertime, Southern California.
Is it a
But
thing
yeah,
there in the season, then, that they burn a lot?
I
Or?
I guess I mean yeah, there's mountains, there's forests that kind of rings the city. It's very dry. Every summer you get a fire occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I saw the thing about LA, that was last year, right? I think, when they were pretty big. But I
Yeah,
hear you say it's like quite a common thing then in the season, normally as well.
yeah, sadly.
Well, that's too bad, but I get why you mention it. I mean, we're going to talk about your book, Yuck, and there's quite some climate and trees as well involved in there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to deep dive into that. But I'm curious, it's a question that I always like to ask first because everyone interprets it differently. And I would love to ask you, how would you describe basically what you do creatively yourself?
Yeah, I think in the broadest sense of I guess I've become like a nonfiction writer who deals with like research and fact. But I think in time, over the course of two books and several longer essays, I think what I try and do is I think curate information and fact in a way that kind of subverts itself, leads to kind of more uncertainty and mystery and more questions through kind of the amassment and the
Yeah.
curation of factual information, not to not to leave readers confused or dissatisfied, but yeah, through a kind of a poetic arrangement of fact, lead people to a place of kind of mystery or a clearing in the forest where they didn't expect to find themselves. And yeah, like as a potential nature or environmental writer, yeah, I guess that forest metaphor is kind of apt. Yeah, find some sort of some mystery in the thick of all this supposed certainty and fact that I'm throwing your way.
Are you like writing on purpose in that finding of mystery, or is it something that you're genuinely surprised by yourself as well? And do you stumble into the mystery yourself basically as well?
I think it's something. I guess I really start digging into a topic and an essay, a story, a book starts to build when I feel like there is like enough kind of like previously overlooked or kind of, unknown sort of material, in fact that I'm finding. So in my experience, it's not like everything I look at and investigate leads to that place, but I tend to pursue things that I have a hunch are going to lead me to interesting places.
Mhm. Yeah, I think about the mystery that you like, if you stumble into it yourself as well, or that you're like on purpose finding a route. And I kind of hear you say that you pick up a trail somewhere and then kind of dive deep and follow that trail of something that's interesting to you.
Hmm.
I'm curious then, like, how do you run into those hints of like things that stand out for you? How do you recognize if something like stands out for you enough to deep dive in, or is it like, yeah, what does it need to have for you to dive deep into something?
Um, well, that's a really good question. I think that's what I was going to say previously is that there's also like a lot of waiting, like a lot of searching, waiting for that next move. Like you just use the metaphor of like a trail or something. Like, yeah, you get to a crossroad and nothing feels quite interesting or crazy enough or counterintuitive enough for me to take that trail. So there's kind of some waiting and reconnaissance saying seeing, over that ridge, is there something potentially really interesting headed that way? So there is kind of some waiting and a lot of searching that goes into that next move. And what starts me on these tracks, I think, is really just often it's irony is kind of a cheap word. It's not my favorite term to describe it, but like when something is like extremely counterintuitive or
Mm.
ironic, in several things that I've worked on pretty intensely over the past couple of years, it's always been, hey, these two things they really don't go together, and yet here they are
Mm.
completely bonded, and that always shoots off some creative sparks for me. It's usually kind of the starting point. In the case of this Joshua Tree book, that would be, my discovery that there's just this vast, this treasure trove of Victorian hatred and vitriol for this totally harmless plant, the Joshua Tree, that today we're, in Southern California and the Western US, people are completely obsessed with it. And, people not noticing, and myself not knowing previously, just how I actually just irrationally despised this tree was.
Yeah.
Putting up a lot of creative energy.
Yeah, I mean, that's also why I ask a bit, because like with Yuck, it was, as I read it correctly, like you went out there to check for a potential wedding location, right? For prepping a wedding. And then you saw this thing, but how do you then decide like to write about it? Or was it like the busyness of the tourism at the moment that you were like, oh, what's the story behind this place? And then you dive into the rabbit hole basically, or?
Yeah, it was both of those. Yeah, I mean, I was out there. We were going to get married out there. We needed to find a wedding venue. Looking online, it was very clear that this place that I'd known about and been to many times had suddenly just become this booming sort of tourist destination. And you go on wedding blogs, if you've ever been on a wedding blog and seen the photos and seen how much curation and money was going into the production of this certain aesthetic out there in the desert around the Joshua Tree. It was just interesting. Yeah, we were being funneled into this pretty well-defined tourist path that I wasn't aware was so sophisticated and developed. And in my own mind, wanting, being to be a contrarian or identify myself somehow as unique or an individual, I was like, all right, I need to justify this to myself. I need to come up with some kind of way to make our wedding unique, or explain why we're doing it here when it's become, so popular. And yet at the same time, if we have people flying from New York or Connecticut, the East Coast of the US, they're going to be landing in Los Angeles and wondering why the hell we're being driven out to this wasteland, this desert they've never heard of, that, they want to go to the beach and palm trees, and we're taking them to these ghoulish trees, like far out in the desert of sand and misery or whatever. So it was a combination of wanting to explain to those people coming to the wedding, hey, why are we doing this here? And then to myself, like, is there actually anything meaningful or important about this place and this plant? So my plan was to do a quick little research dive and maybe write, a couple pages that I would fold into like a nice little wedding favor that would use my little, potential prose ability to write something pithy and research based for my own purposes and for wedding guests. And obviously this spiraled into something bigger when I started finding new things.
Yeah, then it kind of just went like a deep dive into American history or history about the region.
Yeah.
Capitalism, I would say, is definitely in there. Climate change. So, yeah, that sounds like a pretty wild spin-off that you end up in then. So, do you remember in what part of the process you figured out like this is going to be bigger than like just a small handout or a favor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was shocked and titillated in a dark sort of way, by just how hated the thing was. And I found quote after quote after quote of people just going off, and in such hyperbolic negative terms about this tree. So that got me really excited. That was funny, and not something that anyone had collected in a book or in an essay. That wasn't published. So that got me excited. But what really took me to the next place was when I made the discovery that people in Southern California, in the course of absolutely loathing this tree, figured out that they could turn it into paper. And so that was another exciting discovery that, okay, so we totally hate this thing. How can we get rid of it? Hey, it's kind of a tree. Maybe we can make paper out of it. And boom, that intuition or the capitalist desire was happening at the exact same time as the city of Los Angeles, the most promoted thing in the history of the world, was growing faster than anything. And what did they need to lure a bunch of Americans sick of toiling in the Midwest on their crappy farms? What did they need to lure them out here to sunshine and retirement? They needed paper to advertise. So
yeah,
I was like, this is again, irony, coincidence, kind of synchronicity, almost like weird. Yeah, so no one's connected this. This is really trippy. We're going to advertise paradise on the Satan's paper, basically. And I was just like, was this crazy? Yeah.
It's really crazy. And that contrast also really stood out to me because it says so much about us as human beings. I felt when I read it, like it made me think about how quickly we can assign like value to things based on their aesthetics or their smell. And like how useful they are to us in the moment, because it's like a perfect coming together of things on that moment of time then that it all of a sudden got another value or got another value. Yeah, like put on it. Yeah, found that pretty interesting. Yeah, why do you think like the reactions were so strong, like against it for so long? And yeah, I mean, it's clear why it flipped into something valuable, but why do you think the reactions were so heavy on it before that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something I've pondered many times, and I don't really have like a good explanation. I think like when we look at the street today and you see it for the first time, I think the reaction is like, wow, it is strange. That's weird. I've never seen anything like that. And I think if you try and put yourself maybe back in some sort of like Victorian mindset over a century ago, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like an expert on, you know, the exact paradigm, but I would think images like just concepts of nature, symmetry, beauty, you know, like Dadaism hadn't happened yet. There wasn't punk. There weren't really horror films, you know. So this thing that was so grotesque, asymmetrical, drooping, I think it kind of upset, you know, the kind of like, you know, inherent like bias people had, or, you know, just their preference for symmetry in nature. And then I think, you know, if you are moving westward across the desert, you know, these were really harsh conditions. These were hostile areas. You know, there were people dying all the time. And you're crossing a desert that is technically, I guess, the hottest in the world. If you believe the temperature readings taken at Death Valley in the Mojave Desert, if you accept them as legitimate, it's a really hot place. And, you know, in fairness, I do think, you know, if you were struggling, you didn't have water, and you came over a ridge and you saw suddenly thousands of these things just arrayed across this plain, it would be pretty shocking and disturbing. And not many interpret it as a good omen, I guess, except for the Mormons, which is really interesting. I don't know if you know anything about Mormonism, but yeah, in the United States, yeah, in the United States, the Mormons are, it's a recent religion, and, you know, say what you will about them, but yeah, the Mormons were the only people that interpreted it as kind of a providential, like positive sign, which is kind of funny if you think about Mormonism.
Yeah, like as said, I really cannot really speak about it because I don't know a lot about it. I think, and I find things on that as well. I think at some point in the Netherlands there were, or at least broadcasted here, there were TV series mostly focused on how many kids people with that religious background would have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's as far as as our image got here about Mormonism. So yeah, I really.
Well, you got to look into it. It's an alien religion, so it might be relevant to your podcast. Yeah, so that we shouldn't go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, I mean, they've taken Christianity and combined it with the ideas of a guy who was basically an esoteric occult figure who believed that there's millions of worlds and alien planets with life on them. So it's not something that the Mormons advertise, but definitely not something that the Catholic Church promoted for hundreds of years or anything.
Interesting. It sounds like something I need to check into then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that plays a role in like the whole flip to the worshipping now, or do you think there's different reasons for that?
Why did that? Why the flip?
Yeah, like how it flipped from being so grotesque, like we get then that after that it's like being capitalized. But as you said already, like now there is the whole boom around the tree basically, and it also being seen as, I think I saw it like in more spiritual circles come by. Do you have an idea how that turned into that direction then?
Yeah, Joshua Tree, I think there's a big counterculture element. I think that started in the 1960s. It probably started there, like in Southern California, musicians, counterculture. In California, some people started going out to the desert. You know, there's this country folk band, the Flying Burrito Brothers. One of those guys was famously, his friends abducted him from LAX airport after he had died. It was his desire to be cremated there, so they stole his body from an airport
Whoa.
and fleeing the police. Took his corpse and actually like immolated it in the boulders in Joshua Tree. So
No
that's become
way.
kind of legendary. Yeah, that's a lot of big folklore out there. And yeah, I mean, combine that with New Ageism and spirituality. Um, talk of vortexes and energy and healing, whatever you want to say about all that. That's in conjunction with counterculture music that's kind of been imported out to the area, and then it's kind of like it's a little cheesy, but I think that U2, the Joshua Tree, definitely had an impact. And over time, like up until today, adding all those pieces together, it seems like then Instagram, like around 2014, 2015, I remember going to Joshua Tree and a lot of these desert parks in the early 2010s. And there would be basically nobody there. You could drive into any campsite. Death Valley National Park felt like an abandoned place. There's just nobody there. And now these places are really blown up, and it's hard to come up with like a cogent theory other than just the proliferation of social media and just the imagery.
Because it brings such a unique image, basically, with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Visually, it's very captivating.
Yeah, I would love to go back a little bit to the like how grotesque they are. I would love to like share a bit with listeners so that they have an idea about your writing style. I find it really unique. It's, in my opinion, a really cool combination of like a bit weird, but also funny and very well researched. I gotta say, I was really surprised by that, and I would love to like share that with listeners a bit. I know you mentioned that part about running through all the quotes of how the hate to the tree is like described. Yeah, it would be fun if you have a section to share for that. If you're up for reading a short bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the book does open with kind of just this barrage of sort of vitriol and negativity that I can run through for a little bit if you want, and try not. If you can go for like 5 or 10 minutes or something.
Yeah,
See
sure.
if that
Really,
works. Okay. Yeah,
I
this
laughed
is.
out loud on that part a few times, like
Did
in
you
the
really?
book, so I think it's fun. Yeah.
Nice.
My
Yeah, I was
girlfriend was
hoping
sitting
people would
next to
find
me,
it
and I
funny.
was like, "I'm reading this now, and how are these sentences real?" And that's also for me the funny part about
Yeah,
it. That
I'm
it's
I'm
actually
really happy to
you
hear that.
quoted it, so it's like real things that happen.
Yeah, I was hoping people would find it funny. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of over the top. It's a little extreme. It's okay. Yeah, and I'm quoting so many people. I'm just dropping in these quotes and references, so I'll probably just kind of change my voice a little bit to signify that I'm quoting somebody. All right. Native Americans referred to it by different names, but for all of them, it was the same: a bridge. Sovarampi, the Southern Paiute, said. Umpu intoned the Western Shoshone. The Kuya called it Hanwichawa. The Spanish traveling overland from Mexico did not see it as a connecting force, but more an inconvenience likely to sever the leather straps of saddlebags. They likened its stiff, sharp leaves to swords. Isote de desierto, they said when they saw them. Desert dagger. Federal Western land surveyors first stumbled upon them in 1844. The daggers did make an impression. The famed pathfinder, Captain John C. Fremont, wrote that their stiff and ungraceful form makes them to the traveler the most repulsive tree in the vegetable kingdom. Fremont called them yucca trees. Until recently, scientists assumed they were a member of the lily family. This despite the fact that some grew over 40 feet tall, lived 800 years, and, unlike the lily, produced flowers that were greenish-white and ill-smelling, according to an early observer. They are not at all attractive, Mary Parsons concurred in 1900 in The Wildflowers of California. Edna Brush Perkins wrote in 1922 that they were dull, lead-colored things. They have a soiled white color, Parsons added, with a disagreeable fetid odor. Francis M. Foltz wrote in 1919 that it is well that you view the flowers from some little distance, for they give off a strong, fetid odor that is exceedingly disagreeable. Nathaniel Britton's 1908 North American Trees claimed that the petals are unpleasantly odorous. Flowers white, rather ill-smelling, Charles Francis Saunders scribbled in 1917. It is a musty odor, similar to that of a toadstool, another commentator offered. The horrible smell, moaned a back page of Scientific American, and still none claimed to know the precise origin of the word yucca. After the putrid petals bloom, they wither and fall away and leave behind a hard fruit that somewhat resembles green bananas, though the Chapin noted in 1894, although they are the last thing in vegetable rankness. The English-born travel writer Joseph Smeaton Chase agreed. The fruit was just a cluster of nubby pods, bitter and useless. The Indians are said to have eaten its pods in times of famine, a writer for Land of Sunshine quipped around 1890, and they must have been near, indeed, to starvation. Jump ahead a little bit. A folio of dagger-like leaves landed on the desk of botanist George Engelmann in 1871. Determined that Mr. Torrey had erred, neither impressed or repulsed, he named them plain Yucca Brevifolia, the short-leaved yucca. Not persuaded, the landscape photographer Carlton Watkins named his lonely subject Yucca draconis with an unusual subtitle, Paper Tree. And yet still further names prevailed across the Mojave, as Chapin notes in 1894. The yucca, which the people in one corner of the desert call the monkey puzzle tree, because it would puzzle a monkey to climb anything so bristling, is in harmony with the landscape of its habitat, by which he meant to say that the trees appear to endure an especially tortured existence. Nothing the desert produces expresses it better than the unhappy growth of the tree yucca, Mary Austin wrote in 1903 in The Land of Little Rain. The poet Charlotte M. Hall agreed. In 1911, she described them as a flagellant brotherhood forced to stern penance for old wrongs. Grey pilgrims without pouch or staff or dust-stained robe or cockle shell, seek ye the path to some lost shrine here in this desert, grim as hell. In the title of her poem, she referred to the trees by what was then their ascendant common name, not palmyras or yucca palms, but yucca trees. While doubts about their proper name persisted, consensus assembled around their right appearance. A single adjective seemed to suffice. A small, grotesque tree, submitted Charles Saunders. A grotesque, narrow-leaved evergreen, ventured Lowell. A small tree with grotesque branching, Johnson added. Clumsy branches, added Saunders. A grotesque tree, yucca, wrote Perkins. At high elevations and extremely harsh sites, it grows in grotesque shapes, continued Johnson. It is doubtful if the world produces more grotesque objects in the way of trees, Fultz wrote. Perkins expounded. Grotesque arms like monsters in pain. One can scarcely find a term of ugliness that is not apt for this plant, Chase concluded. A landscape filled with Yucca Brevifolia has a nightmare effect, even in broad daylight. At the witching hour, it can be almost infernal. So concluded California Desert Trails in 1919. Fittingly, the infernal tree resisted fire. The spongy, fibrous wood was useless for ordinary purposes, wrote Saunders. A curious, coarse, fibrous substance, Charles Shinn wrote in 1891, of little value for firewood. When it burned, the acrid smoke choked the lungs, just as the dry seeds of its insipid fruit spoiled the palate. Such facts proved not merely unhelpful, but more so horrifying to the Christian mind of the westward questing pilgrim. Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, God himself commanded. Have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over the cattle. Behold, I give you every herb-bearing seed and every tree. But what were those Argonauts risking life and limb to break new ground in God's country, as Bono might be heard to sing on the album The Joshua Tree, supposed to do with these sudden damnable trees that would bend to no purpose? The traveler, crossing the Mojave Desert, has her curiosity violently aroused by certain fantastic tree forms. Weird, demoniacal, wrote Mary Parsons. It is a weird and menacing object, Chase agreed, more like some conception of Poe's or Doré's than any work of wholesome Mother Nature. To inspire fear and loathing in human beings appeared to be the tree's sole purpose. They always seem to have been arrested in the midst of some uncouth antics, brandishing daggers like a juggler. I could go on and on for a bit, but I won't keep reading for too long. Get the idea. There's a lot of great quotes still in there, but yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. Yeah, and I
Yeah, no
also
problem.
wanted to say, like, for listeners that are not that much into reading but love audio and audiobooks, there is also a link in the description to the, yeah, I would just say unique and maybe even more hilarious audio version. I will not spoil too much about that, but I'll just say that you're a great voice actor as well. I can
Thank you.
say that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. I'm curious just to get a bit of backstory from like how you got to the point where it's now, because if I saw it correctly, you wrote multiple books, like two now, right?
Yeah.
And then you do a lot on your Substack and you do the occasional podcasting. But I'm just curious, before that all, like who was young Barrett, to say it like that? And yeah, what did creativity look like when you were growing up? Was it always like present? And do you remember when it like switched from maybe enjoying creativity into like creating yourself as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I really did not enjoy reading or writing until my late teens, and most of my creativity as a younger person was probably wrapped up in music. I was a drummer in bands beginning when I was like age 13. I I'd been grinding my
Really?
teeth in the car driving around Southern California with my mom and hearing Led Zeppelin and grinding my teeth in rhythm. I knew I could play a drum before I was
Yeah.
ever handed one, and I could. And even the multi-limb dexterity of playing a drum kit. I mean, it just happened immediately, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, so lots of music. And then, I was a good student. I think out of fear primarily. I just got good grades, so I wouldn't get in trouble. But later in high school, something clicked and I had the desire to be something, like, quote, an intellectual. Something tripped in my mind and I wanted to write and read and take I don't know, pursue some path through books and language. I don't know how it happened exactly, but a few teachers probably late in high school.
So there's not like a moment that you thought like, oh, this switched it or something. It just organically grew in there,
Uh,
or?
I think it was it was late in high school. I'm 18, just reading a couple books, and I think it was kind of like an explosion, kind of philosophical, spiritual maybe that happened in reading maybe existential literature, existential kind of fiction. And some of that was political too. I think I was kind of a strong activist in high school, and I think I wanted to make a difference in the world, and some kind of intervention, impose myself in some way. The ego-driven to an extent, but then also kind of spiritual, transcendental. Just seeing intellect, reading, research as like a path toward some sort of higher pursuit, reality, truth. Kind of idealistic stuff. That's what started.
How old are you, like end of high school in the US then?
18th.
Yeah, pretty like
Yes.
maybe I'm just late, but I feel it's like pretty young to feel such a heavy, how do you say it, like purpose drive being ignited. I can imagine. Do you feel it like that if you look back on it, that it really like that there was a switch to do more things with purpose, or because that,
Yeah.
I don't know, feels like, yeah.
As you say that, it makes me think of something which is kind of embarrassing to admit, but yeah, you're asking me to pinpoint it. Like, was there something? It'll bring it back to music. So if I have to say it, it's occurring to me. It probably was age 14, and it happened with music. I went from listening to lame Southern California pop punk, to suddenly being turned into something serious, intellectual, and driven toward some higher mystery. And that happened with the band Tool. Was starting
Mm.
listening to Tool at age 14. So my musical trajectory went from, hey, let's get girls and make these funny songs and like be cool and like skateboard, to like, oh, like, what the hell is this creepy guy talking about? How is this drummer Danny Carey like doing any of these crazy patterns? How is this so heavy and dark? It was
Yeah.
mysterious. It was challenging intellectually. And so it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I think, yeah, my intellectual and music trajectory kind of went like, took a little turn.
Why do you feel like that's embarrassing? Like, for me, if I hear you say too, I'm like, whoa, that's serious stuff. Like that's like complexity on the stage, like deep
Yeah.
diving. And I love how you feel that that's like your how do you say it? Like your navigation basically into diving deeper in other things. Because if you think about music and you think about Tool, that's like deep diving into, you know, the material. Why do you feel that's like embarrassing or something?
I guess just maybe it's just my self consciousness of like Tool fans in that community or something. Because I was a big Tool fan, and there are people that are into Tool can be a little insufferable and obsessed and take that band like really seriously, and it has kind of like a cult built around it. So I guess I'm just a little. I want to like hold up a little bit of a distance and be like, hey, it was Tool, okay? Listen, it was Tool, but there's a lot of good art out
Yeah.
there, and I'm not blindly worshiping Maynard James Keenan or something like that.
Was it more like a cult thing, like behind it then a bit as well, or is it more that there is a pretentiousness around
Yeah,
that fan base then?
yeah, I think there is a pretentiousness, yeah, and people who are really into Tool get made fun of at times, which is
Mm.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of memes out there, and there's some funny YouTube videos. It's kind of a thing if you haven't heard of it.
No, I didn't.
Times past, like maybe Tool. Some of these early bands from the 90s they're kind of vintage now. I know Deftones is getting tons of listens. New metal almost sounds like it's coming back. So some of the kids are going to start finding Tool, but they should know that Tool fans can be pretentious and think that they're in touch with a higher reality. But shit, man, it's a great band. So definitely
Yeah.
it will turn you on to some wild stuff if you let yourself sit with some of those albums.
Yeah, I mean, hence my reaction. Like, I think I missed the whole backstory about it, and for me, it's just like, whoa, that's complex. I remember like playing the songs on the Guitar Hero, and then it was like, whoa, that's the hardest song on the game, you know? Like that's
Really,
my level of my experience at that age, I think. But yeah, I think I was like, how old are you now? I think that was more or
I'm
less the same age.
38. I'm getting old. Yeah, I'm getting up there.
Yeah, I'm a few years younger. Like that's probably why I experienced the Tool differently. Yeah.
I can tell you a crazy story about Tool real quick.
Yeah.
To just hammer down on the transformation. So Laterals is kind of a masterpiece of an album, and they went from the previous album on a kind of dark and angsty to Laterals incorporating the DMT kind of inspired art, psychedelic inspired art of Alex Gray, who's obviously a genius. And a lot of those songs kind of are reaching for something kind of transcendental or higher, not kind of steeped in rage and whatever. But the first show of that tour, the very first show of that massive tour, happened in San Diego, where I'm from, and
Mm.
it was on Halloween night. And it was it was freshman year of high school for me, so I'm brand new to high school. I'm on my path to adulthood. This band that I just found just dropped this album. The first show of the first leg of that tour is down the street from me, and so I go there with my friends, and we all just walk out like with our heads exploded, like so. Yeah, age 14,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
That started like transformations there. And then like you started to get more into the writing thing like around 18, so to say. You got two books now. They are both like quite environmentally themed. How did that find its way? Was it like a organic development for you as well, or how did that became like a theme for you?
Yeah, I think I've always just been interested in like philosophical questions, big philosophical questions, the relationship between human beings, the natural world, human beings, and the environment. I think like the disenchantment of the modern age, our attempt to separate ourselves from nature while being, inherently, inextricably, but by definition of nature, that constant tension in the human species forever
Mm.
since the discovery of fire onward to AI and wherever we're headed. I mean, I think the path toward environmental writing and nature writing was definitely just rooted in just deep questions of philosophy. What is the human being? What is our relationship to the natural world? And I think we don't know. We're struggling through that today. With the current ecological destruction reaching just kind of an unfathomable apex right now on a trajectory towards extinction, probably.
Mm.
So it's the biggest it's the biggest question of our species. How are we going to find a way to deal with our big brains and all the tools we're capable of making without like destroying ourselves, And that's where we're at today. And I think since I was a young person, I've just been fascinated by that tension You know, like who are we? How are we this smart and stupid at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah, that's also really what stood out for me, or what I thought about when I was reading the book, that I felt like it really showcases how resourceful and smart human beings are, but then just in the moment when we wanted, to use it for a short-sighted problem, kinda like a close distance problem. Yeah, that's I think the best I can frame it in English. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like the further away, like it also came back in the book, right? Like the trees were a problem, then they were used as a solution for something, but then they end up becoming another problem and wasting away.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I also was like wondering, do you feel like in the book the Joshua Tree lifeline story is a bit of a mirror then to how humans see like the broader environment in a sense, or
Yeah.
how we relate to that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely yeah, a microcosm for our relationship with nature, and yeah, this desert in Southern California as kind of like a laboratory, a way to zoom in and see over the course of a few hundred years how we have entered an area and slowly. I mean, it's so complex with everything the book runs through, but yeah, this thing we hated it, we wanted to destroy it. Now we're in love with it, and at exactly that time, another irony, we're being told by the scientists that it's slipping away and it'll be gone by the end of the century due to our own activity through climate change. So yeah, I mean, it's especially poignant because it has become sort of a spiritual symbol, and I mean, yeah, people really do love this thing. And there's a lot of projection happening. There's a lot you could do psychologically, analyzing why that is, how it's come about. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a powerful microcosm, the Joshua Tree environment.
Yeah. It also makes me think a bit about how I can find it really sad that I feel that there is more attention to restoration and to preserving the earth and stuff in the recent years. Also, hence to like very big like campaigns. At least what I know from our side, European Union has been pushing a lot for it. I think 2020 2030 is like announced decade of restoration, things like that. So there is a lot of attention to it. But I also feel that the whole fact that the angle of the story is now that we need those other species living for us to be able to live. So the angle is again, what does it bring us as humans? And now it's beneficial to us. So now we need to preserve and restore it. And I'm really kind of missing the, I don't know, the core feeling of like, hey, there's someone else, something else that's also living. This is not our planet of humans. Like, it's like we're just part of a big system, and we need to realize that, we also need to be, grateful for, and also giving others the space. Yeah, like it's not our land, it's not our animal kingdom, it's not our seas, or those kind of things. And I feel it's a bit sad that now the story, it's going in maybe a better direction if we want to restore it, but it feels like the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit sad, I feel.
Yeah, no, I feel that it's disappointing, and I mean, and that goes back to what I was saying. Yeah, our relationship to the natural world. Yeah, that quote from the book about God gave us every herb bearing seed and every tree. I mean, yeah, this is deep in our mythology that somehow this all belongs to us, and it's ours to use. And the lamest, saddest way to start in a climate conversation, though it's very powerful, is to be like, hey, do you want to keep making money? Do you want to make money indefinitely? Well, you're going to need to stop drilling oil because the atmosphere has a limit. You're going to deep fry us all. So like, hey, like Mr. Senator, President, Congressman, oil executive, like it's in your interest to consider, the natural world to make changes. If you want to keep making money, that's one way to come at people. And then from there, does the species want to continue to survive? Well, we're going to need to restore and plant and care. It's really sad that we can only get to, potential, sustainability through that self-interest. It's not, we can do better than that.
Yeah, hope so. Yeah, I think so too. Um, yeah, I'm also like curious. Do you think then that like art can play an important role in shifting those angles of looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that art can do that, but I don't know. Nothing else, persuasion, argument, information, nothing else is doing it. I guess my ultimate hope with art, as I've come to see it more over the past couple of years, is that in Tibetan Buddhism, there's this idea of like pointing out and like I guess technically a spontaneous awakening, profound spiritual awakening can occur when a very profound master offers something called a pointing out instruction, which is literally pointing your awareness towards something you might have overlooked, and suddenly the mind sort of snaps and realizes kind of in awe where it is in the whole situation, I don't know how to
Yeah.
articulate that quite clearly, but for me, I as I've begun to see and think about it more and more, in my sad idealistic world is offering a pointing out, potentially pointing towards something that could deliver, maybe not a full awakening, but something similar. I think that's what happened to me when I was reading as a younger person, was just kind of some, that powerful insight. And if there's a way to harness that, to believe in those insights and translate that into something, a new society or world that isn't built purely around, continual economic growth and individualism. I mean, these things are just not going to be sustainable. So I don't know. It's very idealistic, but I don't know what else could do it
Yeah.
other than art. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also find it like a difficult, like it's a tricky thing I feel to balance. I think, just to be clear, like for me, it's not so much like what someone thinks about the topics, but like around COVID, for example, we saw a lot of people that had arguments for not wanting to vaccinate. We had a lot of people that did want to vaccinate, just as an example. And, if then the opinion, how do you say it, like moves a bit too far away from like the safe, you know, well-behaved middle kind of, then either someone is like going nuts and oh, they don't know what they're talking about or whatever, and it's all like a very personal experience of what is like right and what not. And I think that is like a thing that I find pretty difficult. You see it now as well with like you know teams around like the wars in the Middle East and stuff. Like if someone feels like they found some clarity in the topic, how do you deal with that balance and figuring out if, that, yeah, I
Yeah.
find that an interesting thing. How do you deal with that? And is it,
That's a whole new, yeah, like terrain wearing of just, yeah,
yeah,
like the facts, truth. Yeah, everything, we're in this like post-truth kind of world. Yeah. So how, I mean, to just like every fact is under debate now through social media, and
mm,
the amount of like weaponization of information and conspiracy theory, and yeah, some of these movements that just seem like they would be impossible, like QAnon in the United States, which has led to, the election of like Donald Trump and things like that.
mm,
Hard to believe that people are really supporting this stuff. So yeah, if you're going to take,
yeah,
hey, here's the latest like climate findings, like here's what the world's best
yeah,
scientists have concluded. I mean, that should be persuasive to people. It might have been persuasive to many a decade ago, 20 years ago, but where are we at now? I mean, we're in a world that where
yeah,
the most powerful people are actively working toward what fucking end game, I don't know, but they're actively working to undermine all public confidence in any form of
yeah,
specialization, authority, and science. Yeah, it's scary.
yeah, yeah. It's fun that you mentioned that, like that maybe a few decades ago people would have like got a lot of value out of science because then the doctors were literally recommending to get cigarettes from this and that brand, and that worked because people took that serious. But now if we do expensive and very thorough research on climate matters, then it's fake news. But we can't smoke cigarettes because this doctor says it in this commercial. It's like crazy how we like, or with the whole AI ChatGPT thing now as well, that people don't take something their doctor said for true, but they ask ChatGPT and they confirm what they are asking because that's just the characteristic of chatbots, that they tend to talk with you. And then they say, yeah, but it says it's true. It's wild indeed. Now that you mentioned that, how that is developing. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah. We'll
it's
see
strange times.
how that goes down. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We need something needs to shake out in the next couple of years, but I don't know. I don't know what that is or what it'll be, but we seem to be headed on kind of a pretty dark trajectory with technology and social media.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I also sometimes try to compare like how humans interact with each other and like compare that with how animals solve issues, for example, in like the groups they're living in or whatever. And then I'm just thinking, animals run into each other, they don't like each other, I don't know, they growl or snarl or whatever, they make a weird sound, and sometimes they flap a paw or two or three, and then often it's like quiets down. But then with all the tools and development that humans have, the effects of that obviously are, yeah, possibly way bigger. And yeah, that's wild. About balancing, like how do you balance like your writing style? Because there is a lot of, I feel, deep research in it. So it feels like you put a lot of attention and value into like facts and diving into facts and researching with feeling, because I feel, as I said, like your writing is also quite playful, poetic, yeah, a bit hilarious here and there, I find, at least. So how do you find that balance of like, it seems like really serious deep dive and playfulness for yourself?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm not really sure. I think there's I don't know. It's maybe like an ear or something. You sit with the information, you keep teasing it and pulling it and trying to find a way to stretch it and make it feel like it's elastic, like it's alive or something. Yeah, because these facts by themselves, as they were found, wouldn't be that interesting. But it's, yeah, the curation, the juxtaposition, those ironies, that sense of absurdity, then gives me an opening to, expand and extrapolate in, some kind of humorous and ironic ways. But I'm not really sure how I do that. It's kind of an ear thing, a sense of modulation and balance. And I'm really happy that you enjoyed it and that it works, because at times I'm always like, man, can I get away with this? Like, I'm reaching for really some heavy philosophical stuff. This is depressing, kind of hard information, and yet, I want it to be, not necessarily fun, but it's like this.
Yeah.
It's an experience. I'm trying to curate an experience, an intellectual experience, an intellectual journey, and that's so much of the work of this kind of nonfiction that I do, is finding a way to massage that information, find the next trail pathway that's gonna lead to just more opportunities to kind of honestly get weird and keep it weird
Yeah.
and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like there are parts that I loved, but now thinking back about the reading experience, I did walk away with like mixed feelings. Like what is the hill called? La
Mm-hmm.
Puenta, Puenta
Yeah, the
Hill.
Puente.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like those kind of things. Then also walking away from it, like, oh wait, that's really like twisted as well. Like, how big is the area? Like, because I saw the little map and I tried to visualize it, but if you compare it with like the city, how do you know how big that is? Because, yeah, just maybe
It's
to
huge. Yeah.
summarize it, there's basically a landfill dump where all the Joshua trees are being dumped, right? I think you can describe it better, maybe, but
Yeah, there's a landfill in Los Angeles that is the largest landfill in the world. And it's called Puente Hill, and it's an engineering marvel. You wouldn't even know it's there. They're buried just generations of trash. And you think of a landfill as you're filling in land, and it's going down into the earth. But this here, I think it became a misnomer for the first time ever. It's a vast mountain. It's like, I think it's over, like 15, 20 stories tall or something. And it's been engineered over generations to just become a sort of like pyramid, stable and building. And now it's covered with soil and planted with trees, and it's a park. And
really,
yeah, you can walk through it. It's been retired a couple of years ago, and it is kind of a fascinating piece of architecture that they were able to do this. But as you're saying, yeah, mixed feelings. I mean, it's, when you think about it, I mean, it's horrifying. It's depressing to consider the amount of consumption and waste that went into that. And, I don't know how many Joshua trees technically are down there, but you know, given that there's plenty of Joshua trees that grow in LA County, and this would be the primary, you know, waste site for like all of Los Angeles, there's definitely like somewhere in there, some strata of Joshua trees that were taken out of, you know, the outskirts of LA County as the suburbs expanded. And, you know, thankfully it's not all waste. All of that rot is generating gases. And so they actually do capture methane there, and burn it to power something like, you know, maybe they claim maybe 60,000 homes receive enough methane energy out of this landfill site. So, and I make the dubious argument in this book that we finally found something useful. The Joshua trees finally proved itself useful as it rots deep in this bubble.
Buried under its own story, basically.
Yeah, man.
And it didn't burn to give us heat, but now it does in rotting state, basically.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, the life cycle of the Joshua tree, pretty crazy.
Yeah. It is really wild. Yeah, we touched a few times on music already, and I think that's something that connects you to some of our previous guests, or basically most of the previous guests, that you're also a drummer, as you said already. Are you still drumming a lot, like recently as well, or is it really shifted to writing for now?
I was in a band off and on many years, and past few years it's been on hiatus. Yeah, so I played in like a kind of this experimental like black metal projects with my buddy John Morgan, and I've done like a few little experimental. Yeah, Rich. Yeah,
Rich.
Yeah, but that's been on hiatus on my end. He's continued to put out some things on his own, and yeah, I've been in a bunch of projects, but it's hard. It's hard to keep it going. I find, you know, it's kind of what writers talk about it sometimes. You know, you don't need a big budget. You know, you don't have to, it's not like writing a script. You're like, oh, this scene's going to cost $1 million. I better not like actually throw that in there. You know, if you're writing books, you know, you don't need to pay for a rehearsal space. You're not driving across town to play shows in front of 5 people at a dive bar. You know, like, I mean, it's not a very ringing endorsement of the music career, but having done it and played tons of shows and whatever. I mean, I love music. I reach, you know, transcendental states, you know, in a complex swirling jam. And I love playing complex, aggressive music and heavy music and things in between. But yeah, at the moment it's mostly been focused on the writing, though I need to get back into it.
Yeah. I checked out the Wretch project. It's like really interesting. I'll drop a link to that as well for people if they want to check it out. I would describe it almost as like some avant-garde black metal meets like classical piano, like jazzy influences. It's quite a wild blend of things indeed. Yeah, very creative in that sense. I had a period there where I like checked out quite some black metal. Had a previous relationship with a girl who played in a black metal band, so I had my my toes in the scene for a little bit, like experienced that a bit. It's yeah. There's a lot of soul, and I feel like the fan bases of the black metal bands that I encountered are like another level. There's so much support there for the artists, which I found really, really beautiful to see. You know, people do come to shows, and not to one, but people try to visit every show of the bands they like. They buy the merch, they, you know, get a record or a tape or something, and yeah, they really, there's really a lot of support for the artist directly, which I think is great in a world where broken streaming platforms like streaming industries and stuff are like not that great for especially indie artists.
Yeah.
So you feel like it's better for the writers at the moment to make a living?
As a writer?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if as a writer there's a good living to be made. I haven't found that, but maybe if you keep at it, I intend to keep going. But yeah, I don't know. You're definitely right that there's a passionate subculture in black metal, and it's really cool to see, you know, people shell out for LPs and everything all over Bandcamp and whatnot. But yeah, for writing books, yeah, I don't know. The state of publishing is crazy. It's just consolidation, Substack. Everyone is a writer. Everyone has a blog. It's cool to see, but yeah, it's like, I don't know. And the media landscape, as we were talking about before, it's complex. It's changing. I don't know where it's going, but I think the key, if you are passionate as an artist or creator or writer, I mean, you don't stop. You know, you're not gonna. No. You're not going to reach your goal, whatever that is, or I don't know. The people that make it are the ones that keep going. So don't make it a hobby. If it's a
Yeah.
passion, don't relent. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you said, like, don't, you're going also while you're not, making a lot of it. There should be another motivation, to say it like that. And then I think that's like an important thing. I think, yeah, like we should all be able to make a living, I think, but it's not it shouldn't be the first motivation to create. Otherwise, it's, I don't think, not working. Yeah.
No, I don't see how you can get into anything if that was your motivation. There's a lot of other things I would be
Yeah.
doing if I was trying to make money, and I could probably be making a lot of it, but that's not really what ever got me excited.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also saying it because I think it's a topic I've been like reading a little bit about lately, like how much courage it takes to follow like your heart and your soul, and like to, you can have a feeling like something is right, but like you also need to make a living, on the side to be able to pursue that longer term. And yeah, it's quite interesting. But I
Yeah,
think,
it's not
yeah,
the easy
keep going
path.
is a good advice. Like without trying, that's not gonna work anyways. If we would turn that into like one question further, like if there's maybe creatives listening or whatever who want to like do something meaningful in their work around the planet, or make it connected to, you know, preservation, or maybe not even like climate per se, but feel like they want to put more purpose or like meaning in their work, how would you approach that? Or do you have a tip for that without like sounding preachy or something?
Um, uh, I don't know. My mind for some reason just goes to like wilderness or something. I don't know what that means, but if you like cultivate wilderness, find a way to get like an atmosphere, an aura, like your mind, the page, the music, take people and take yourself, take your art into the wilderness, the wild and unpeopled space where it's not about us. It's not about you. If you can find a way to get human beings to, the natural world, for its own sake, as you kind of mentioned, it's not necessarily there for us and something we should cherish insofar as it's useful to us. It's something that has a right to exist on its own and will exist on its own long after we are gone. So yeah, I don't know. Find a way to get into those wild, unpeopled spaces and find a way to open them and expand them for people.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know what that means or how that translates exactly, but it sounds very black
I don't know.
metal-esque.
Yeah, but sometimes it's also the great thing that things are just free for interpretation by however the interpreter is interpreting them or something.
Yeah, go into the
So
unknown. Yeah.
yeah, connecting to the alien theme again. So I think we're like slowly heading a bit towards the end. Yeah, of the talk. We're already talking for over an hour. I see. But I'm curious if there's one thing or like a feeling or an idea that you hope that people leave with after reading Yuck, what would that be?
I think reading Yuck and my earlier book, China Lake, and similar books, other sustained pieces of writing I've done, I think I want people to take away a feeling of mystery in that they're, while we are living in this stage where we're surrounded by so much media, we're just wrapped up in talking facts. ChatGPT is telling us, whatever fact we want to hear, and we're going to sit there complacently and accept it more than our doctor. We're living in this crazy point in time where it feels like there's not anything, to discover, and we have basically mapped the entire globe and have all information in our hands. I think hopefully people take away a feeling that like, hey, there's a bunch of strange stuff still sitting there, a bunch of weird hidden history. There's places, wilderness areas, there's crazy connections throughout history that don't make any sense that can create these rifts and these creative sparks. So I hope people come away with like a feeling of, just a little bit of awe or mystery or hope that maybe, that we don't necessarily know what's going on. We don't have everything figured out, and that being like a springboard toward something positive, a more creative future.
Cool. I hope that too.
I sound so idealistic.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for me personally, what is without ideals, I feel like it takes away a lot of yeah, how do you say it? Like life energy or will to, do things. I think
Hmm.
yeah, for me it would like take a lot of life pleasure and sense away, I think, as well. If I feel like it's not there or, all hope is lost, I think.
Yeah, to aspire and have potentially some unrealistic expectations or drives. I mean, yeah, I mean, even to think about creating an album or a book. I mean, if you were to sit there at the start and stare
Mm.
up at that wall and that mountain and picture yourself getting to the top, you probably wouldn't start if you could visualize the difficulty of that journey. So it's only in process, So you have to, yeah, take it in
Yeah.
that way. Yeah.
I think it's the initiator indeed, and then it's important to break it up after. But without you know, without an end goal inside, I think you will not get moving into that direction as well.
Yeah.
So, and then it's about your tip after that, like just keep going. Then once you set your route,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Tenacity.
And now like for you, like, is there more books coming, or can we talk about that after what was it, Woolsey Canyon Road?
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, that's a good question. Woolsey Canyon Road, huh?
Is that still coming or not? Because I saw like the name of the thing and it got my attention, and I do see the connection with absurdities.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely working on that. That is a third book in the works. Yeah. I've been working for years on a book about a nuclear meltdown that happened in Los Angeles that technically would be the largest nuclear meltdown in U.S. history, and yet no one's heard of it. It happened in Los
Yeah,
Angeles. It happened in ground zero of the American suburb, the Valley. When people say the Valley, they're talking about this area in the outskirts of LA. And there was an experimental sort of military site almost out there hidden in these hills. And in 1959, there was a huge nuclear meltdown that was literally covered up by the federal government for 20 years, probably killed
yeah,
hundreds of people. There's not a book about it. No one in LA really even knows it's there. It's crazy. And if I start describing all the crazy historical bits around this, from Werner von Braun, the Nazi SS rocket scientist, his first job, captured Operation Paperclip, was delivered to this site to rebuild the V2 Vengeance rocket. There's a cave out there with Native American rock art showing human beings, ascending into outer space. It's like just a few 100 feet away from this rocket test stand. It's getting really surreal and just like, it sounds like you're making stuff up. So definitely ripe terrain for my kind of experimental nonfiction environmental brain. So I'm
yeah.
working on that. It's going to be a strange book.
I'll keep my eyes open for it. I think I saw that on your Substack like 2 or 3 days ago, and I literally the evening before finished the documentary about Fukushima. I just finished that like documentary about that, and the next day I read this thing about that
Mhm.
being the biggest. Yeah, curious for that, but more books it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited
Cool.
for it.
Cool. Then yeah, then I would say to all the listeners, you can find all the links to Yuck, the music from Reg, and more about Barrett in the description. So if you got any thoughts on the episode or questions, just drop them in the comments or on our socials. And I want to take the opportunity to do a little reminder that we do restore 1 square meter of ecosystem for every new follower on any of our channels. So yeah, if you could give us a follow or subscribe, it's literally 2 clicks, costs you nothing, and it does really have an impact. And yeah, Barrett, I just want to thank you once more for your time. And yeah, I found it a really fun ride, so to say. Really cool to hear a bit more about how you got to the point of now, and yeah, looking forward to the next books. And I think we also talked about a lot more than just the book, and we got some depth here and there and some philosophizing. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. I really appreciated the talk. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jasper. That was really fun. Thank you for having me on.
All right. All the best.
Take care.